Hey everyone, welcome to the Hockey Hub. Sophia and Kasey, episode 64 in the middle of the second round of the postseason. We have a busy show because we're going to be previewing games, recapping games, and by the way, you can watch us on Nessun Nation and all the socials. Like I said, episode 64, we are starting with a guest, someone I love very much, one of my favorite people in Boston. I think we're just going to bring him in off the top.
Oh, I say that's great.
Yeah, Pete Blackburn. We're going to bring him in. Pete Blackburn joins the show. One of my favorite people, but Pete, we did have PJ Stock on the last episode. I said the same thing to him, so take that with a grain of salt.
No, that's totally fine because PJ Stock was one of my favorite players growing up. As a smaller guy who likes the guys who mix it up, PJ Stock was like a cult icon around here when I was growing up. So no offense taken.
No, he is one of the best. Really funny, but you're up there in the funnies. Really quick off the top, we're obviously going to be covering a lot of topics, but FC Bayern Munich takes on Hoffenheim on Saturday at 9:30. What are your predictions for that game?
Oh, no. I have had no time for anything but hockey, so I'll leave that one up to you.
Okay, for those just joining us, a little bit of an inside joke, which is like a bit of a rude move to do inside jokes on a show where people don't know what the heck is going on. But we DM'd you to be on the show, asked you last minute to be our guest, and joked about you talking Bundesliga, which I know nothing about. I think, Kasey, you know nothing about either. Maybe you do?
I played soccer, so
Oh, she played soccer. Okay. Okay, never mind.
Manuel Neuer. If anybody asks you about Munich again, just say best goaltender ever for them.
Yeah, know nothing about that. But okay, jokes aside, let's bring up a tweet. This is where we wanted to start. I don't know how you found this jersey. It's your tweet from, I think it was yesterday, but the DeBrinks CTA. We're going to have to bleep out what you said, but here's your tweet. I found this absolutely effed up jersey on eBay during a stream a couple weeks ago. Fell in love, how funny it is. Now it's mine. You're the proud owner of an effed up jersey. What were you doing? Like, how did you find this exactly?
It was when the Senators were coming back against the Maple Leafs. I was like, I'm going to buy a Senators jersey. I'm going to go to Toronto for Game 7, and I'm going to root them on. And I found this like weird Alex DeBrincat jersey where the last name is spelled wrong. And we've had Alex DeBrincat on our show. I sent it to him, and he was like, I have never seen that before, but that is absolutely my autograph. So I am now the proud owner of like the world's most cursed Alex DeBrincat jersey. I'm so happy about it.
I love it.
How does one make that kind of mistake is my question. But like, what do you do with that kind of gold of content jersey wise? Do you hang that? Do you wear it? Do you wear it to a game to try to curse another team?
Yeah, I'm a little undecided right now. Like this might end up in my office framed just as like a talking piece because it's that funny. I don't know if I'll ever like wear it. It's too big for me, as most things are. But yeah, I think that I'm gonna frame it and have it be a conversation piece.
Your personality is not too big for you, okay?
Thank you.
Yes,
appreciate that.
You've got that. Okay, obviously we have you on to talk hockey because you're the king of that and you just have the best spin on things. You know your stuff, but also your personality is great and you always make it fun to watch. We want to ask you about the postseason, but because we're in Boston and because we know you're a Bruins fan, let's talk coaching a little bit and you know who's on the market, who's left. We're gonna give you a couple names and get your thoughts on who could be, who you'd want to be, if you have an opinion on it, the next Bruins coach. So we're going to give you a couple guys in the system. Obviously, Joe Sacco, Jay Leach, Ryan Muginel. I don't know. Have you ever met Ryan Muginel, by the way?
I have not. I don't think so.
You know the term beauty. Like, he's the definition of a true beauty. Okay. And then there's also Rick Tocchet, Marco Sturm is in the rumors, Marc Savard, Misha Donskov, the Dallas Stars assistant coach. What are your thoughts on where the Bruins should go with coaching in this kind of retool era?
Yeah, I think the most interesting and intriguing name is Tocchet. You know, obviously he's probably the most high-profile name, but I also have questions about like Rick Tocchet and some of the things we're hearing about him, which is that he's interviewing teams and teams aren't interviewing him. And I just have I have some questions about whether or not, like, as a general media, we're kind of overrating Rick Tocchet at this point because outside of the first year in Vancouver, like, how much success has he had as a head coach? And you look at kind of what happened with the Canucks last year, things fell apart under his watch, both in the locker room and on the ice. And so I have some questions about that, but as the coaching carousel is kind of turning, he probably is the most bona fide headliner name. And I guess it just depends on where the Bruins think they are in their retool or rebuild. Do they want a guy who gets them back to contention immediately, I think Rick Tocchet would probably be the clear-cut answer there. But are they more looking for somebody who's going to grow with them over the next handful of years? So I don't know really where they fall on that.
I feel like, Kasey, you had an opinion on that.
I did. I didn't see it. Okay, say the Bruins stick to some of the themes and conversations that have been taking place over the past couple of months, and say that this team does get a little bit younger. You mentioned it. It seemed like he kind of lost his locker room. So, like, you can't really come in as a voice who couldn't control, command, and keep the attention and motivation of a locker room. You've got this young group. You've got some guys who are now trying to find their voices as leaders. Like, that's kind of a journey to go through. I think Zadorov will be tremendous next season in terms of his vocality, but I just didn't see it as a fit if this team properly gets younger and doesn't try to do like a plug and play in the offseason and make a run next year, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to compare two different groups of people. Like, I don't want to cast like a general dispersion on Rick Tocchet based off of the group that he had in Vancouver. Like, I think he might be able to teach some young guys in a younger group. And there's a veteran core here. Like, it's not a fully young team. Like, I don't know. You look at a team like the Montreal Canadiens this year, the youngest team to ever qualify for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, they're not that young. I just think that it depends on what kind of system you want in place. And, you know, Rick Tocchet is known for being a pretty defensive coach, and that might play to the Bruins' strengths right now because they have more on the blue line than they do up front in that forward group. So, like, maybe that's kind of where they're leaning towards in terms of complementing their strengths.
Yeah, and you know what? In terms of what kind of leaders or what you need from a coach, like Bruce Cassidy and Jim Montgomery had said many, many times in the media that they felt spoiled with having, you know, Chara, Bergeron, and Marchand. I feel like I use this narrative all the time, but it's just worth repeating because of this weird transition of the culture that's happening. And I've said this on the show before, Pete, to Kasey, but you probably haven't heard this opinion. But I don't know how much you listen to the locker room clean out sound, but I was like right front and center with Charlie McAvoy, and I'd never seen him like that. Like, I've never, and I mean that as a compliment. He's always very passionate. He obviously takes his job really seriously, but I never felt this like, this is not going to continue into next season attitude. And they were bearing down like the next day with Bergeron and with Chara and with Pasta to just make sure that the culture was not going to get lost on them. And he, like, I felt it in his bones. Like, I just felt it that this was not going to happen. They're going to turn things around and make sure that they keep, you know, what was built. But that being said, do you want a coach that helps with that, or do you want one that kind of stays away, which what Jim Montgomery and Bruce Cassidy kind of were able to do? You know, they weren't told that they had to do that. They were just able to leave it up to the guys in the room. So now you got to consider that. And I think Sweens should be having conversations with, you know, the Pasta and the McAvoys to kind of get, you know, that perspective, or maybe just tell them how it's going to be. But the coach being more of a hands-on or hands-off guy with this younger team or this rebuild, that's going to be different than it's been, and it's going to matter. You know, management should really take a look at that, what they're working with.
Yeah, I agree, and I think this is probably the most intriguing coaching change. Like, we've seen a few coaching changes over the years here recently, but I feel like this is the most intriguing one because it's a transition period, whereas the other ones were it's just somebody new taking the reins of what's already here. And I think that the culture was never really in question in any of those other previous regime changes. This one, you kind of have to have somebody who you trust to mold things, because the roster is going to be changing. It's going to be in flux. You're going to have a real transition period in terms of leadership. And I think that players are going to need to be a little bit molded to this new era that you're transitioning into, and you need a coach who's capable of doing that. So I think that's part of the reason why I'm so intrigued by who they turn to in this search here.
I feel like your answer is going to be no, but I'm just going to ask you, obviously, do you care about this person having Bruins history? Because I mentioned Sturm, Marc Savard. Yeah, I don't think, same.
No.
Doesn't matter.
Give me the best coach.
Yeah, get the best coach. And hopefully, and what about timing-wise? Like, do you think sooner the better, before the draft, before free agency, sooner the better, or are you kind of just same thing, like whenever it happens, get the best coach?
Whenever it happens, I think that's fine. Like, you look at what happened last year with the Columbus Blue Jackets. They didn't hire Dean Evison until late in the summer, to the point where we were like, are these guys going to head into the new season without a coach? Are they going to assign a player coach on the bench here? They took their time hiring Dean Evison. I don't know how much of that was fully their choice, but he ended up being a really, really good coach for them, because he is a really, really good coach. So I don't think there's any rush. Just make sure you get the right guy.
You would be a great coach in terms of hype man.
Be a morale coach. I think I could be a good morale coach.
You can be a great morale coach. Like, would you consider ever being a cheerleader?
Depends on the outfit.
Okay.
What are they going to make me wear?
That's a good question.
You can give us a detail of like what the outfit would be to inspire you to do so. One of the other topics going around though for the coaches is maybe giving somebody the final tap to get that NHL, the first opportunity as an NHL head coach. Dallas's Donskov, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah,
he was one of the ones that I thought was a really cool opportunity and option, not only because of what's going down in Dallas, but he was the ops guy when they were putting together the Misfits roster for the Vegas Golden Knights, and I was a big fan of that roster and just the development and the combination of all of the adversity they had to go through to get to a postseason time after time again. So he feels like he'd have a good blend for this team and whatever they need come to. So is there anyone that sticks out to you for that first NHL opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, the big name has been David Carl. We know that he's going back to Denver, and I'm shocked by it. I thought that this was going to be the summer that David Carl made the jump, because there were so many attractive jobs on the market. Another guy that I'm kind of leaning or looking at, and I have been for a while, to the point where, like, I don't know if it's ever going to happen, is Nate Leaman from Providence. Like, I just feel like he's been a prime candidate to take an NHL job for years at this point. And he's obviously very comfortable in the college ranks. And so those would be two guys that I would really like to see make the jump. I just don't know if and when it's ever going to happen.
I guess we'll have to wait and see with, obviously, but I like your insight there, and mostly agree with, doesn't need to have, this Bruins tie or Bruins history. And it just depends on what Sweens feels the locker room needs. I don't know how much time you have today, so I kind of want to move on from coaching, because I really want to talk about free agency. You already know the notable UFAs, but I'm just going to name them really quick for people listening. Mitch Marner, Nikolai Ehlers, John Tavares, Sam Bennett, Brock Besser, Aaron Ekblad, and Brad Marchand. Let's start with Marshy and Bennett. How wild would that be if they came back to the Bruins? Am I in La La Land right now, or do you think there's a possibility?
I think it's unlikely. I think that when you open the door for players to experience something new, and it turns out to be something very palatable and enjoyable, which it seems like Brad Marchand's enjoying his experience in the Florida Panthers right now, and who can blame him? I think you're opening the door. Like, the Red Sox fans saw it with John Lester, and so I wouldn't bank on it. I also wouldn't say it's not a possibility, because I do know Brad Marchand loves it here. I don't know how much he has a desire to spend the twilight of his career on a team that's either struggling or rebuilding or whatever you want to call it. Does it help if he can bring a guy like Sam Bennett with him? Maybe. And I think the Bruins front office could count that as a big ol' win in their book, is that they get a first-round pick for this guy, assuming the Panthers wrap up against the Maple Leafs. They get a first-round pick, and he goes on a little recruiting trip for half a year and brings back Sam Bennett in free agency. I think they could call that a big win for themselves. Do I think it's a foregone conclusion? Certainly not.
Yeah, that would be wild, the two of them together,
The
especially.
antics. Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point, at the beginning, it's like a breakup. You're like, oh, this stinks. But then when you start dating other people, sometimes you're like, wait, this isn't so bad. So Brad's kind of, I guess, dating the Florida Panthers. But just watching the antics that they have together and hearing about how the guys on the Panthers talk about him, Paul Maurice included, but obviously his teammates, it's like, for me, I'm like, oh, this hurts so much still. I'm like, yeah, of course he's the best. Yeah, I know. He's hilarious. He brings, obviously his A-game professionalism, but he just makes the room a better place, and just seeing what he's got there, he looks pretty happy. So we will, have to.
See, I think that's the selling point, though. Both of y'all's opinion on this really fast. We're trying to figure out coaching here in Boston. You've got Paul Maurice as your head coach down in Hockey Paradise, and he's honestly one of the funniest guys. Like, Paul Maurice is a tremendous coach and human. So knowing what you're gonna get in a coach, and also kind of having that relationship and tie and being able to build that, could that be more of a selling point to stay down south?
I don't know. I mean, Pete, you can take that one. I think it's going to be up to I think a huge portion is going to be Katrina and the kids. Like, do they want to go on an adventure and check out another city and move? Because they haven't now. Why would they right now? Or do they want to keep their roots in Boston? And I think that's a bigger selling point of what like his family wants. But I don't know, to Kasey's question, what do you think about just like having established the last 3-4 months in Florida? Is that a bigger selling point to stay?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to have a compelling case, especially if they go on a deep cup run. Like, and again, like when we talked about the timing for the Bruins head coaching search, like maybe the point where it does matter is if you're trying to bring guys in free agency. It's harder to sell guys if they don't know who they're playing for.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be a tough sell for some marquee free agents is, hey, come on over here. We don't know what our roster is going to look like and we don't know who's going to be coaching, but trust us, you're going to have a good time. So like that might be a harder sell, especially for guys like Brad, who's towards the end of his career and doesn't really have a lot of time to waste if he wants to make more pushes for a cup.
Are you willing to pay Mitch Marner whatever the hell he's going to get?
No.
Yeah. No?
No.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I think he's a great player. I think he's a really, really great player, but I have concerns about how he disappears when games get hard. And we've seen that in these playoffs. We've seen it in previous playoffs. Like when the game gets nasty, and the Panthers have started to turn that series into a pretty nasty fight. When the game gets nasty, Mitch Marner tends to disappear. He's had 0 shots in each of his last 2 games for the Leafs, and that's just not good enough. Like he's a 100-point player, and he's a great playmaker in terms of seeing the ice and passing. But he's also a 100-point player because he scores a good amount too, and he's just not shooting the puck. And that's a trend that's continued for years at this point. And I just think if you're trying to go out there and you're trying to command $14 million or whatever it is, you got to have no gaps in your game. And unfortunately, Mitch Marner does have gaps in his game when they matter the most.
Yeah, and you know what? Just to wrap that point, I used to say, because obviously I have all my friends and family in Toronto and chat about hockey, I used to say to them, like, Mitch Marner 5 years ago, or let's say now, but on the Bruins team that existed 5 years ago, I was like Chara, Bergeron, Marshy, throw Nick Foligno in there. Like they would, I wouldn't say like whip him into shape, because I know he's matured and he's grown up, but I was like, whatever, and trust me, I've worked in the Toronto system. It's changed, it's changing, but when I was there, it stinks. Like it was just so like individualistic, superstars, I'm the best, don't talk to me. The media is way tougher there than it is in Boston, believe that or not. But that also feeds into like the ego of a young player and XYZ. And I was like, this guy needs to be like, I don't want to say trained, whatever the word I'm looking for, but groomed into like culture, being a team player. And I'm not saying that he isn't, but he comes from the OHL where he was like a superstar and like this like little, god with the London Knights, and then goes into the Toronto Maple Leafs where even that quote, which was like blown out of proportion, where, do you remember the quote when he was like, we're kind of like gods around here? Do you remember that from? Yeah. So anyway, that like Mitch Marner with the culture that existed with the Bruins when I started and long before that, I think would have been a good fit. Right now, I don't know about that. Who would you want? Who would you want on this team?
I like Nick Ehlers. I think they're going to need a couple top 6 wingers, and I think that Ehlers is, not as well-rounded or talented or skilled a player as Mitch Marner, but at the price point he'll likely command, I think might be a better investment for the Bruins than Marner. They're obviously going to need some help down the middle too. I don't love the free agents that are out there down the middle. Like you mentioned, Sam Bennett. Like I understand why Sam Bennett would be appealing, but I feel like Sam Bennett is more appealing to a team that needs like that final piece or that final edge to push for a Stanley Cup. He's not a piece that you build around in the early stages of trying to assemble a group. And so I do worry about like how that contract, whatever contract he gets, might age over time, given the way that he plays and kind of the nastiness that he brings. But maybe they'll be a little bit more creative outside of free agency, or perhaps like offer sheets. We saw offer sheets play a big role in last offseason. There are a number of RFAs this year that could be intriguing. Matthew Nyes is a guy that I would love to poach from the Maple Leafs. I know that it would cost a pretty penny, but I mean, the joy of being able to pluck one of their better young players while also securing one for yourself would be pretty good. I think that they're going to have to think and operate a little bit outside of the box this offseason in order to fill all of their needs and fill all of their gaps on this roster, because there are plenty.
If there's a world where Nyes could be on this roster, I'd honestly lose my mind. But so what are your thoughts on Besser? Because I was kind of trying to figure out if they could find a guy that can match pace or at least kind of like polish off anything that Pasternak's got going on for 1 for 2. He's ruined my hopes and dreams going against the Lightning a number of times because he just has a tendency of batting in pucks no matter what they look like and how they're ricocheting. So I just kind of thought like that net front presence, I was hoping that Mitten will grow into that, because you're right, it's not really that attractive when it comes to some of the center options out there, and you might just want to stick with developing what's here.
Yeah, I mean, Besser's an interesting one because like they obviously need goal scoring, and he's a goal scorer. Unfortunately, I think he's a bit one-dimensional, so it would be kind of buyer beware there. And to Sophia's point, like when you're shopping on this free agent list, you also have to consider guys that are going to contribute to the identity and the culture of your team, because you're kind of rebuilding that forward group. And much like a guy like Marner, I worry about what Besser would contribute towards the identity of this team in terms of being one-dimensional and being, a team that goes quiet when things, get tough or they get nasty. And so I think they need to shop around for different sort of looks and different sort of elements that are going to bring identity to this forward group and kind of round it out. And, given what the market might be for Besser, I don't know if that's where your money would be best well spent.
Kasey?
I was just going to say, ideal world, top 6. What does your top 6 look like for the Bruins? Or who do you bring in?
It's a good question. I would say the easiest answer is different. It has to look different because this year's was certainly not good enough. I think that most likely I'd like to see them have a big ticket signing, at least one, that is going to help them offensively, whether that's Ehlers or somebody else. I think you have to inject a big ticket signing into that front 6, and then sort of improve via trade somewhere else, whether it's on draft day, whether it's on just kind of on the open market where teams are selling. Like you look at what the Washington Capitals did last year, and I know that was kind of an exception more than a common occurrence, but like they really thought outside the box and they perused the league and they identified guys that teams were willing to part with that were good players, and they went out and made these swings, and it worked out for them. Do I think that the Bruins are going to have that kind of luck this summer? No, but I think that you might be able to identify a player who is either kind of off the board or is a harder sell to go out and acquire, and that I think is something that they're going to have to look into.
We have like 2 minutes left, and we were going to get to the postseason, but with 2 minutes, I don't feel like doing that. So we can just plug that you talk about that on your podcast, What Chaos. That's where people can listen to talking about the postseason with Pete Blackburn. You guys have so much fun. I wanted to ask you, we can talk a little bit about that, but quick, we're talking about Besser, we're talking about some of these guys. How do you separate, because you also have this personal relationship with some of them, especially coming on the show. I love Besser as a person, so then I'm like, wait, I kind of want to like have him on the team. But to some of your points, I agree. How do you separate that? Liking a guy, rooting for him, and seeing him as a player.
Yeah, I mean it's tough sometimes. Like I think ultimately, like I'm a Bruins fan first, and I am a hockey fan second, and I'll always root for the Bruins to be as successful as possible. And whether that means like I have to, like I'll ultimately talk myself into Besser being awesome for the Bruins if they sign him. Let's be honest here. I can always talk myself into it, but I try to objectively look at it from to take my hat off if I can, just to keep this job and be able to keep working, and because I don't want to get a real job. So if I have to like suppress my Bruins fandom a little bit to give an objective take, I'll do my best to do that. But ultimately, I will come around and say, yeah, like Brock Besser, come on down. You're a Boston Bruin. I'm happy to have you.
Well, you guys have a super fun show. Do you guys record every day for What Chaos?
Every day, yeah, Monday through Friday. And we do like 60 to 90 minutes every day. on the games that happened the night before, the games that are happening that night. We have guests, we have players. It's a ton of fun.
It is. If you guys haven't listened, What Chaos, I'm assuming it's everywhere, right? Like Apple, Spotify, blah, blah, blah.
And best tweets in the game.
We push the YouTube because we love the video element of it. And we like talk about highlights. We talk about the weird jerseys that we find on eBay, and then listeners send them to us, like the DeBrincat jersey. So we push YouTube first, but yeah, we're also on podcast platforms and all those.
Okay, well, you guys can find What Chaos on YouTube and wherever else you get podcasts, but check out the video stuff because these guys are a ton of fun. Pete, we'll have you on a lot, I think, in the summer. I'm going to push for that. Thank you so much for your time, and maybe some updates once the coach is hired and a couple free agencies over. But thanks for joining us on What Chaos. I mean, on the Hockey Hub. Oh, my God. That's
You're
your show.
welcome to come on What Chaos,
That's your
too,
show.
but thank you for having me.
Okay, thanks. All right. What Chaos? I mean, maybe we will be on their show.
Honestly,
I would
we
like
could
that.
create our own chaos.
I love Pete.
I'm here for that. I'm so excited to finally meet him because, like I said, best tweets in the game.
He's so funny.
There was one that ruined my life when somebody was like wishing him luck for the playoff game Bruins last year, and he was like, "It's not up to me," and I was like, "That's literally hockey. It's not up to you. Your emotions are not up to you. You are not in control." So
No, sarcasm, wit, pushes the envelope a little bit. Like I said, some things we'd have to bleep out for TV. But Pete, thanks for joining us, guys. We're actually going to finally get into the postseason on the other side of the break of Hockey Hub. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Hockey Hub. Sophia and Kasey here with you. Yesterday, in Bruins Nation, and Kasey, you know I come from Toronto, so in Leafs Nation or whatever, this day goes down in history as the best or the worst day, depending on what side you're on. But yesterday, May 13th, 2013, was the anniversary of the Bruins versus Maple Leafs Game 7 comeback, which definitely goes down as one of the craziest moments in all of both teams' history. So, yeah, down 4-1. I mean, I can go over exactly what happened. I wasn't there. But the reason we want to bring this up, because this is a hockey show, obviously the Bruins not in the postseason, but we want to bring it up because we were just talking about it in the office, and then all of a sudden everyone was kind of like, where were you when? And people were chiming in, being like, oh, I remember I was in, XYZ, I was at home, or my friend was at the game, and everyone on either side has a memory of where they were. And I just wanted to share that I was just fresh, young, naive, and new into TV, okay? And I was doing, I think, TV for a good year, but live I had never done. So we started with pre-recorded segments, which I'm sure you know. You get to do a million different takes. You can stop down. You can
say, yes, I feel good about this, show the world.
Yes, yeah, you can stop down. But the producer was like, you're ready for live. We were doing kind of live updates back before Twitter was big. We still did highlights, a nightly highlight pack.
Love it.
And I was in charge of doing the Leafs Bruins highlights, all the hockey highlights from that night, but Leafs Bruins in particular. And as you know, when you're starting out, you're writing down everything, you're making sure you get all your stats right. And so we had built the pack for the Leafs beating the Boston Bruins Game 7, holy moly, they move on to the second round. And that obviously didn't happen. So in a panic, we're changing things last minute. It goes to overtime. We're like, okay, they can still win. The Leafs they can still win in overtime. We can kind of save the graphics even. There's so much that goes into building highlights in a show.
Right.
And sure enough, we're undoing everything. But I had to go immediately after the game. I think we were the rights holders. So, the game's over, the handshakes, and then you go to black and then come back up and you're doing the highlights. And that was my first ever live
From pre-recording and this crazy game's going on.
Yes, and I had to go live, which I hope to people watching at home, they're like, okay, girl, what's the big deal? I would just say, imagine getting ready for a presentation that you're doing in front of the whole company, let's say at a conference, thousands of people, and you get ready doing this presentation all night, and a minute before you have to go live, or go do it, your boss is like, we're changing everything. This is what you're doing. And so you're like, wait, what? Obviously, it's not like I had to talk about football all of a sudden. It was still within the game, and I watched the game. But that's my memory of it. Don't shoot the messenger, but I was obviously a big hockey fan at the time, and I was a Leafs fan because that's where I grew up. So not only that, but I was kind of emotional about it. I was like, this stinks, reading the highlights. But now for Bruins history, that's one of the best moments. Did you watch that game? Do you remember that game?
No, I cannot say that I watched that game, but I will say 2013 was an interesting year in terms of like working around the Lightning and being a fan of the Lightning also? Because like you said, you grew up in Toronto, so you have that connection with that team. And I grew up in Tampa, so the Lightning was my team. But like that was the year that like the Panthers were starting to kind of be irritating, so we were having like really tough matchups with them. So we played them on May 12th. And then the Islanders, like that was the New York team that would like crush my hopes and dreams almost every time we saw them. So like there was just like, I understand the tension.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, you know, we've had some wild runs against the Islanders in the Eastern Conference Finals. So I can understand the tension, but what you guys described in terms of like that comeback, that atmosphere, production, talking about the fact that they were like already clipping certain things to like, you know, unfortunately Bruins lose and then you've got to change everything. Like to your degree, just top to bottom, making new graphics, putting out new lower thirds, like the whole narrative changing and you having this much time
to figure it out,
to commit to it.
And then going live.
Yeah, no, the stress, but also the excitement. Again, my emotions are not my own in hockey.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was very stressful, but very fun. But funny enough, we're going to talk about Leafs Panthers tonight, but that was kind of, I don't know if it was the very beginning. I think the Leafs kind of had this reputation. They were struggling. You know, they were always like blow a lead. Like they just weren't a championship team, but they looked good. Like they weren't expected to beat the Bruins.
Right.
And then they were on pace to do that in Game 7. But that was kind of a pivotal moment in terms of Toronto Maple Leaf culture. Like, of course, this would happen to them. And it was like this nail in the coffin. It was a big way to lose. It wasn't a little way to lose. It was like a really big way. Of course, it would happen to them. And then the Bruins have their number. That was emphasized over and over and over again in the regular season or playoff series in years to come. So that was kind of the moment that is still haunting them today in terms of narrative, of like, of course, this would happen to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And that's kind of what they're dealing with, having a 2-0 series lead over the Florida Panthers, now being tied 2-2. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like, that's what playoff hockey is. Happens to everyone. They can still come out and win it in 6 or 7. They might lose. But this isn't the first team that maybe blew a 2-0 series lead. Like, okay, let's relax. But in terms of their narrative, that's very real for them. And even though none of those guys, I don't think, maybe Morgan Riley, maybe, none of those guys are on the team then,
at that point,
it's still chasing them. How do you deal with that? Like, you just
that's
put it
what
in bed?
I find so hard. Like how to escape a narrative, because that's the other thing. Like considering, what was it, 2 seasons ago, the theme was the Maple Leafs can never get past the first round, and then they do it versus the Tampa Bay Lightning, and then they do it again the following year. So like, I guess it's just one of those things where you realize the magnitude of the mental toughness that goes into all of this, because like I know for me, like when you put a label on something, it's kind of hard to escape said label.
Yeah.
And like it was the conversation versus the Senators, like look at the Leafs leafing, because now the Senators have an opportunity to jump back into this. And like when you look at it on paper, the Senators really could have came out of round 1 over the Maple Leafs. So I think you're right though. It's 2-2, it's playoff hockey. And on top of that, who didn't have this series going to 7 from the beginning?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
I did.
Exactly.
So tonight, or not, is it tonight? Yeah, tonight. Game 5 back in Toronto. We know about the Max Domi hit, XYZ. Are you expecting retaliation? Like, what are you expecting in terms of energy? And then if you want to give like your 2 cents on outcome, but energy and just vibes.
Energy, I think, will be high. You know, you are so good with player perspective and emotion, and like I think just the idea of Stolarz being on the ice for morning skate yesterday, like it's just one of those mood lifters. Like, and I feel like playoff hockey is so significant of like playing for the man next to you and even playing for the guy who's probably sitting up, you know, in the club, watching from below because they can't be a part of it. As for Domi and the potential retaliation, I think that the Maple Leafs head coach has been very stark on like, we're not going to play into the bait and switch. We're not going to play into the Panthers wanting us to come in there and be emotional. We're not going to play into their physicality. We'll be physical when we want to be physical. And doing it on home ice, I think it's easier to stick to your game. That's what we saw them do so well in order to go up 2-0 in the series. So I think that they're going to continue to stay level-headed because that's been the message from day one. But the hard part is Panthers are getting in Panther form. Like, Game 1, they showed up late, as Matthew Tkachuk said. Game 2, it took them a minute to still find their footing. And whether you love or hate the Panthers, you guys have heard me give credit to Paul Maurice before. He's one of the top 5 coaches out there that throws his lines in the blender and is going to deliver different looks whenever he needs be, no matter how much time is on the clock. And that's going to keep the Maple Leafs on their toes. So it's going to be an interesting game because when the Panthers are hot, they're scary.
It's funny you talk about Paul Maurice. You were talking about like you like him as a guy and a coach, and obviously he's got a lot of success. Some of his media stuff drives me crazy.
He's a goof.
I mean, it's kind of annoying.
Yeah, he's a goof.
Like it's. I remember last year with the Bruins, they won in Florida. I can't remember what game it was, and like just the way we talked about it on the show. He was just kind of like, you got to give them, like, it was almost like he was not pitying them. What's the word when you, like, patronizing?
Patronizing.
Yeah, like he's like, wow, like they pulled out a win here. And I was like, dude.
But you know what?
I did not like it. I was not happy with it.
I understand where you're coming from on it totally. Because I've heard the same thing and the same commentary on John Cooper. I've heard people say that they feel like Coop can be patronizing in some of his responses sometimes. So, like, it depends on when you catch them. Like, I find him humorous in the sense of, like, when you see footage of him fully in a suit, like, getting on the ground, like, talking to the guys and stuff, like, it's just the interaction. So, like, looking at how the buy-in is with some of these coaches in some of their locker rooms, like, I'm like, okay, this is cool, like, this is funny or whatever. But, like, I'm from Tampa Bay. Yeah. I have everyone in Tampa blowing up my phone right now. Like, I'm not allowed to say one good thing about the Panthers. Right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so it's just like, it's one of those things, ebb and flow, but.
Well, also one of the coach's jobs these days, because the media is so, you don't just have two writers anymore. You have like TV and Twitter and like social media, is to play the media. And I think he does do a really good job with that. Yes. I think he plays them very well because he's nice, the way he answers the questions. And then that even though writers and people should be objective, it does affect like your relationship with the coach if he's good to you. He does a really good job doing that.
And Jackie Redmond's mentioned before, like how great he is with giving detailed responses.
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
And it makes your job easier on this side.
Yes. So yes. No, he was the Leafs head coach for a while when I worked there. Like I really I think he's a great guy and he obviously does a great job. But sometimes I'm like, all right, buddy.
You're a lot.
This is an NHL team you were facing, like not like a Bruins AHL team. Like, come on. We talk about, having breakout players or like the unsung heroes in the postseason. You got to win with unsung heroes, but your stars need to be your stars.
Yeah.
Matthews, 3 assists, no goals in 4 games. Marner has 5 shots on goal, but only 1 since game 1 and none in the past 2. So those guys are definitely feeling the pressure. They need to be part of the not the win, but just like rallying and being part of that, what I mean?
Almost to say breakout, especially when you see a guy like Matthews. Here we are again postseason. Where's the goals at? Your stars have to be your stars, as you said. I wonder if maybe because of how the crucialness of your bottom 6 and how they deliver and where they show up, and typically that third line's that shutdown line and stuff. I just wonder if maybe because of how the depth scoring has to play into it, if they'll be okay. But it's true. I mean, that's your leader, that's your new captain. So seeing him be able to punch through any barrier he's dealing through in the postseason, I think is a momentum swing in a sense, and not having that is tough. And you've seen some growth in Marner and as a whole in the postseason, but still the numbers, that's what everyone gets hung up on.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's made some really complex plays out there, and I think he's a phenomenal skater. It's just, again, the competition is tough, and where are the other layers of scoring coming in?
Yeah.
Which everyone knows by now. I'm a freak for Matthew Nyes. That's the most support the Leafs will ever get from me in my entire life.
Oh, yeah. No, Nyes has been unreal and is earning his, whatever's coming up. Yeah.
His keeper's offer sheet. If Pete can make that happen, please.
I know. We had Pete Blackburn on the show. If you're just joining us earlier, we were just talking about notable free agents or what the Bruins could pick up, and Matthew Nyes would be really nice if that could happen. I doubt it, though. I don't think the Leafs are letting him go. You mentioned Stolarz skating. Here's the thing. Joseph Woll has been great.
Yeah.
What I hate I had so much anxiety with the Ullmark and Swayman goalie debate when it was happening. I had so much anxiety about that. It's a difficult choice to make unless one of them's running away with it. If he were to hypothetically be ready, I know he's not for tonight, I don't think, but if he were to hypothetically be ready, what would you do?
See, it's tough because you feel like you won. It's a security thing. Almost I think that for the Oilers, the mentality of the defense shifts when Stuart Skinner goes in, just because it takes time for him to build, and be that strong guy. So I think Stolarz gave them a layer of confidence, which means it's one less thing to think about on the ice. But you said it, Woll has been tremendous. Mm-hmm. And we talked about it actually on Hockey Hub. He wasn't getting enough credit for some of the good work that he did in previous postseasons. So it's not new for us to see good performances out of him. I would, if the concussion thing didn't freak me out, because the vomiting just tells you so much, I would go with Stolarz.
You would?
Yeah.
Okay.
One less thing to think about for this team. There's an extra chip on their shoulder and confidence knowing what they accomplished with him.
That is a difficult decision, given anyway, but I don't think he's even ready for tonight. So anyway, we're gonna send it back to break. We've got other series to talk about, more hockey with Kasey and myself on the Hockey Hub right after this. Welcome back to the Hockey Hub. Sophia and Kasey here talking all things hockey, but obviously the postseason. We just finished talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs, Florida Panthers. We're gonna move over to the West. Tonight, Oilers at Golden Knights, Game 5, Edmonton leading 3-1 in that series. Has this surprised you? I had Edmonton from the start going to the final again.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, I fall to you. I did not.
No, why not?
I thought it was finally the Kings' year, and
Oh, really?
it was for a number of reasons. It wasn't just hopping on the trend. It was like, okay, they've had a pretty good defense this season, last season. They were a tremendous road team last season. It just felt like they finally put the pieces together in terms of like good defense, good goaltending, great on the road, which comes in handy in the postseason. And then more importantly, they started to find that offensive firepower. And I liked how they were just orchestrating as a team. They checked a lot more boxes, and then
I mean, that was a wild series. Like this, that's sometimes the better team wins. Sometimes it's like a bounce and you're like, what the hell? And like that was like a crazy series. But I had Edmonton. I've already said this, so I don't want to like talk about it all the time. But I had Edmonton only because they made it to the final last year.
Oh yes, you mentioned the pattern in terms of teams that make it and then like don't win the Stanley Cup, how they tend to, totally.
Yes. Especially if they don't have like too many changes in the off season, right? And it's like, okay, you made it that far. And now you know what to do or what not to do, because like I said, sometimes it's just like a crazy bounce. But if you're keeping the same experience, the same skill, and then the motivation too, that like hungriness is really there. I had Edmonton all the way. So I think they're gonna, I don't know if it's tonight. I don't know if they're gonna close out the series tonight. This one I don't care. Like I would like to see it end. Whereas a couple of the other ones, I wouldn't mind seeing 6 or 7 games, because the Leafs Panthers is the only one that's tied 2-2. The rest of the series are up 3-1.
Yeah.
So this one in particular, I'm kind of over Vegas. I don't know why. I don't know. I'm just kind of over, and I want Edmonton.
I feel like some of the games have just been like, considering that where the excitement lies with other series, this one's just kind of like somebody finish it, like Street Fighter, finish it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like the Carolina Hurricanes, Washington Capital ones is boring, but actually on What Chaos on Pete's, did you see
Are they boring
or are they just good?
Just good? Yes.
Which is a really good point.
Fantastic point, because I couldn't figure out where I leaned on it, and then I was just like, holy crap, I guess it's just boring, because I underestimated Carolina to a degree, only because I wasn't sure where Anderson's health was going to lie in all of this, and we haven't seen a full season out of him in some time. But somebody tweeted he's like a man possessed, and it's stuck in my head ever since. I was like, he is. And you know what? Good for Brenda Moore and company. Like, continue to go on, but it's boring. Yeah,
I wanted the Caps-Canes series to be a little bit more fun to watch, but it hasn't been. I think Leafs-Panthers has been the most fun to watch. Maybe it's also because Eastern Conference, Bruins, rivals. But Oilers-Golden Knights, so that could end tonight. Stars-Jets, first of all, hat tricks, like crazy.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, wild.
So they posted like a picture. It looked like almost like a school picture at the end, and it was like big night for the Finns, and I was like, this is adorable. But there's just so many guys I feel like have like a redemption chip on their shoulder outside of Mikko Rantanen. I know that that's the guy to talk about, but Granlund, I loved when he ended up in Dallas, because I was like, he's such a stoic guy. You know, he does his job. He's a great hockey player. He's just going to go in there and do what? And just plug and play. And then he comes out with a hat trick, first career one. So I thought it was really cool. But I've always rooted for the Dallas Stars. They've been my underdog for years. And then this year I bail on them, and guess what? Killing it.
They are killing it. So do you feel like they have what it takes to go all the way? I feel like the Jets could push it a little, but I don't think they're winning the series just based on how they've been playing. I feel like they're dominating, and the one game that the Jets did win, it's like they clawed kind of. Yeah. They clawed out that win, or whatever you want to say.
No, perfect.
Yeah, sure.
Clawed out, scratched out. They did all the things.
Yeah, and it was like a big effort, although, this is playoff hockey. Both teams are efforting it. But if you know what I mean, you could just feel a difference where the Stars have it under control. And if the Jets are getting back in, it's just max effort.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. Basically, the Jets had to dig a little deeper to get out of that first round. And so we saw comebacks from both teams, but we needed to see an extra layer when it came to the Jets getting through. I just think that what the Stars have done well also, and we saw it in last night's game, forcing mistakes. The Jets just have a tendency to be back into like bad habits on the drop of a dime, and that's what costs you postseason. So considering the fact that last night should have been a better swing for them, like there was amount of plays that came off of turnovers that puts a really relentless team in perfect positioning. So considering like the Stars, again, like the star power, I know everybody talks about seeing more depth out of them, but I mean, if you've got star guys that are going off and making an impact each time, I think the depth will roll into the mix eventually. But yeah, I just think the Stars kind of have more of that oomph. And Ottinger, I mean, you want to talk about a man possessed. I don't know if he was just like watching Hellebuck during Four Nations or what happened, but he unfortunately was one of the goaltenders that I'd be like, great, but I don't know if I trust him in the postseason per se, and I'll never, I don't criticize players because I can never do their job. But then like for goalies as well, like that's the hardest position on the ice, but Ottinger has just been like lights out. I don't know who this guy is, and I love it for him.
And that's what I love about playoff hockey, and it's like just when goalies stand on their head and that is so frustrating for a team when they're getting the looks.
Yep.
But that's, a goalie can obviously win a series and be a game changer. I want to run through the series. You're going to tell me what you think's going to happen.
Okay.
And then I have a silly story. Oilers, Golden Knights, 3-1. They're up 3-1. Is it going to end tonight, or how many games are we seeing?
I have a weird feeling it's going to end tonight. The
Okay.
biggest question mark was how they were going to like confidently perform in front of Stuart Skinner, but like they have the ability to switch things up. Marc, I was a fan of when he was with the Dallas Stars, and you talked about the guys that had a carryover from last season. Like,
Yeah.
I just think that like they have the ability, and you can't keep them out of a third period. It's just dumb.
Okay. Jets, Stars, Dallas obviously up 3-1.
Stars
Stars? Okay. And in 5 or in 6?
in 6.
In 6. I think 6-2. Capitals, Hurricanes, Carolina up 3-1.
I think Carolina closes the door.
I do too. You guys know I love Alex Ovechkin so much. So I was really hoping that, he could maybe get another cup or whatever, but I do think Carolina might even end it in 5.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Panthers, Maple Leafs, series tied 2-2, obviously. 7.
This
Is it
one's
going 7?
so-
It's going 7.
it's going 7.
Thank God, because we need entertaining hockey.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Something to break up the monotony of like,
Yes.
the other ones that are just about to be done.
Yeah.
And you never know what you're going to get. Like when the temperatures start rising and when people start just like losing it on the ice, like if nothing else, we are entertained, as you said. Like.
And with that one, obviously Bruins fans may be invested just to see Marshy do well, but also the first round pick.
Absolutely.
Because of the
Trade.
Yes, but what's the conditional? Yes, it was
Yes.
conditional, yes. So first round pick. Thank you, Brad Marchand. So watching the games, sometimes, I'm going to be honest, I'm not watching the entire game, and I do a little like YouTube recap
Some
in
of
the
them
morning.
are like at the wee
I'm
hours
tired.
of the night.
Yeah.
I had to tweet a poll and be like, so who's really staying up this often? Like,
I mean, the first round was so much fun, and it depends what you have going on that night or that day. But I had a moment where I was watching Oilers Knights highlights, and I was watching, and I was like, whoa. They're scoring a lot of similar goals in this
Yeah.
game. I was like, okay. And then at the very end, it was until like 30 seconds left of the YouTube recap, I was like, oh, these are game 1 highlights, not game 2. Like I watched the same game. There was like a goal that was like flipped over the net and was like kind of batted in. And I was like, wow, to do that 2 games in a row is wild.
it's insane.
Yeah, and I was like, that's crazy.
The exact movement.
And I was even texting my friend, and I was like, I cannot believe that they scored that way twice. Like, that is really weird. And then I kept watching, and I'm like, something feels off about this. So I was like having my coffee, and what gave it away was, it was in Vegas. So what gave it away was like at the end of the highlights, there was this one Edmonton fan that was standing there being like, yeah. And I was like, wait, I saw that fan. And I was like, oh God, this is the same.
This thing is looping.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, I gotta get on to game 2. Anyway.
That is funny.
Yeah, I was like, so how do you get through a day? All right.
On loop.
Exactly. We're going to take another break. We'll be right back to wrap up the show after this.
Welcome back into the Hockey Hub here on Ness and Kasey and Sophia hanging out. Fun show.
Yeah.
Because we had Pete Blackburn on earlier to get us started. And look, I am a fan of his work. We've talked about it, the wit, the tweets, just the way that he has like a fun coverage and presence with hockey. But like, you know that you're doing great coverage when you get to the soul of talking to players, but also like great coverage of the game. Like, I think it's a great combo.
No, honestly, his great analysis and gets great things out of the players, and it's just so entertaining. Like, I don't, what what do they call it? Dual screen watch. I don't really dual screen watch where you follow Twitter and the game.
Oh,
You
yes,
know,
yes,
some
yes.
people do that. There's a name. I can't remember anything today.
I couldn't tell you what that is.
Multi-screen, whatever it is. But for Pete, I have his Twitter up. Every Bruins game, I have his Twitter up.
You
because
do?
It's just so funny.
It is.
Yeah, like he's good and like his memes and he's like appropriately critical but in a funny way.
Yeah.
Or he'll joke about like wanting to die when something bad happens or whatever. And he's like, I'm good. Like he's great. And his podcast is a lot of fun too.
To live in his head for one day, because I mean, like when you're that good with one-liners, you're just like the most brilliant person to me. Like my family's just now getting into hockey and stuff, and like I'll just send them his tweets.
Yeah.
And, like that's how they kind of like have tied in personality and emotional to hockey. So it's been cool.
Well, then I'm assuming I've never met PJ Stock, but former Boston Bruin, played for a lot of different teams. Always jokes that he was like a bit of a plug. Like he was a really good fighter, and that's what I would say he was known for more than his goal scoring. I think he has like 5 career NHL goals, and he always jokes about how he's like, I got 5, which is better than you and I can say. But he's awesome too. We had him on the show as a guest the other day, and I'm hoping to have him on a couple times in the summer. But you know, you got to inject some personality into this. This is a game. It's not just a game for those guys on the ice. It's not just a game for us as fans, but it is supposed to be fun too, and I like both of them that they can make it a little lighthearted.
Yep.
All right, we've got like 30 seconds left, so I think we're going to wrap up and say goodbye. We'll see if there's any games to be played into Monday when our next show is, because they could wrap up this weekend, but hoping for a couple Game 7s to make it fun. We're going to be back Monday, everyone. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on the next episode 65. Bye.